the borderline to Hong Kong from Shenzhen. On the other side, Hong Kong chose to accept or reject all the illegal immigrants according to its economic situation. So when the economic situation goes higher, goes better, it just accepts all the illegal people. When it got worse, it just send all the illegal immigrants away back to China. The Chinese diaspora mostly carried out via the transit trading of population of Hong Kong. And all the Chinatowns, Chinese global special zones became the main sources of investment from overseas Chinese to mainland China after Deng Xiaoping's opening reform in 1980s. So this is an atlas of global Chinatowns in all the different countries. And most of the overseas Chinese from the Chinatown actually sent over 100 billion money investment in mainland China in the 1980s. So one of the overseas investor is another red-capped merchant whose name is Henry Fok, in Chinese Ho Yingdong, who got his first bout of money in smuggling goods for communism China during the Korean War in 1950s. So at that time, China is launching the war, helping the North Korea fighting South Korea, and American and the United Nations has launched a big bloc surround China, and so there's nothing can be imported from the rest of the world to China. However, some merchants in Hong Kong secretly smuggled a lot of goods, including medicine and weapons and food from Hong Kong to China, which make some billionaires. So SEZ was invented as the multiplication of Hong Kong and all the overseas special zones into the mainland of China. So here you can see this is the territory of Hong Kong, and originally it is actually the site for transit trading business. So after Shenzhen has been designated as SEZ, Shenzhen get the power from Hong Kong and become another part of the open world. The one-child policy benefited from the one-child policy, one-port policy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the. So within all the SEZs, Shenzhen was the most successful because of its adjacency of Hong Kong. Here you can see 4 SEZ in the southeast coastline of China. However, there is another case. Hainan, the island, the second largest island next to Taiwan, was supposed to be the biggest SEZ and the successor of Hong Kong. It is failed as a sacrifice of the brutal experiment of planning economy. Over 20 million square meters of building were abandoned on the second largest island of China. All this abandoned building has all kinds of programs like the office buildings, villas, and apartment and resorts, which actually literally make a really abandoned city. But Shenzhen was hence becoming a city within 2 wars. One war is the borderline between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. So it is very similar to the borderline between San Diego and Tijuana. Where you can find formal custom houses and informal borderline business. And here you can find the People's Liberation Army from the mainland China, and there is a Royal Hong Kong Police Force. Another war is the borderline between Shenzhen and mainland, which was also under strict military guard. So here is actually a forbidden district between the mainland and Shenzhen. There is army soldiers actually working by every day. People had to get a license of frontier defense to go to Shenzhen. So if it is in 1980s, I want to go Shenzhen, I have to get this license from the police station. So all the experiments, economically or administratively, formally or informally, was taking place in between the 2 wars. So this is SEZ. There are 2 wars which is called the first frontier and the second frontier. Shenzhen became a paradise of planning capitalism, which was later called socialism with Chinese characteristics. The first experiment took place in the paradise is the land reform. The state-owned land was able to be rented to private developers for the first time in the communism in China. This land policy triggered the land finance that became the main resource of the local government income. Actually, this picture shows how the enterprise set up by Li Hongzhang, the red cap, the prime minister of the Qing dynasty in 1860s, had been reused by the Communist Party in Hong Kong and back to China in Shenzhen, reinvested in Shenzhen. This was the start of recent land reform that became the biggest driving force behind the instant urbanization. So this diagram shows that the property, the ownership of the land was shipped along the different time in this timeline to in between the state-owned and the private-owned. So finally, because of Shenzhen in this phase, this goes to actually two directions. One direction is state-owned, which actually monopolizes the first market, the highest market. Another level is actually semi-private owned by the peasant, which is called by Chinese the collective owned. And because of this system, the peasant of China do not have to stay in the slum of the city when there is a crisis. He can go back to his land, become a farmer again, and get a so-called social security. So there is a very little urban slums in China. That is the reason. So this geopolitics actually utterly changed the geography in Shenzhen and generated numerous inventions, including formal inventions such as a twin city license like this. In this license, you can find this is Cantonese, this is Hong Kongese, so that you can use the license to drive across the borderline from Hong Kong to Shenzhen freely, much easier than before. And as well as informal inventions such as the village in the city. So this is a Huanggang city. As shown in this picture, it is one of the villages got prosperous via renting parking lots to Hong Kong truck drivers. So here you can see the ancestor temple of the city. Every city has a public center, which is an ancestor temple. And you can see here, there is a big empty space, which is piled up by the containers. All the containers actually transported from Hong Kong by the truck drivers. And in order to get more houses, the truck driver has to rent rooms from the villagers. So the villagers, because of the collective ownership on the land, they can build the houses higher and higher like this without an elevator. And then this can become a village of truck drivers. However, a village of truck driver can be easily become a village of concubine, because most of the truck driver has to find a girlfriend and finally maybe a secret wife from the hinterland China, and all the village, the pattern of the village has to change according to these very informal families, including the school, primary school for the very secret kids. And including an informal hospital for the sex diseases, something like that. So this is also called a concubine